Everybody, back to the ConTech Exec podcast. Today, I have got some friends that I met over at Groundbreak, Track3D or Tracked. We're going to, either one of the two will work for these folks. David Swider, and of course, N.K, Chaitanya. Man, good to have you guys on the program today. David, how's things going in your neck of the woods?
Excellent. As I look out the office, it's raining, but thanks for having us on, Robert. I appreciate it. It was great to meet you at Groundbreak, and look forward to discussing what we're seeing out in the field these days.
Yeah, right. NK, man, they don't let you out of the cage very often, do they? They kind of just like tuck you back into the office and say, yeah, just make that happen, right?
Yep, these are one of the few days when I'm sitting in the office actually. So yes, otherwise, it's actually moving conference to conference, site to site. It's that time of the year as well, right? So
I
again,
gotcha.
thanks for having us, Robert.
Yeah, no, I was interested in this, reality capture as we move forward. I always call it the age of AI. Reality capture is going to become more and more prevalent for folks. Now, kind of give me a quick, David, if you will, kind of give me a quick idea of when folks come to you, like what's their first, they're like, hey, what does this do for me? Or I've got this problem, I need this. How do they approach you with that?
Yeah, a lot of times it's not even an approach, right? What we're doing is one of the things that NK was really good about doing when he created Track3D was he went to the field first while he was building it. So when we come out to the field, and you mentioned AI, and you hear a lot of people about AI is going to take a job, or we're going to reduce FTEs, or in reality capture, we're just going to trust the productivity numbers that we're getting. And I think, Robert, you and I even talked about it at the show. That's not what we're getting. What we're hearing is superintendents who know they have to get out of the truck, but they're looking for a solution like Track3D that can point them to where should they be looking? Where do they need to mitigate? How can they get in front of that next rework that's going to happen, right? We're seeing companies today, as you know, we're seeing companies that are now acquiring companies to be able to get to that productivity number and get to that production tracking, right? So that's what I'm seeing when I'm out there and I'm listening to the superintendents. And candidly, you're absolutely right, Robert. For me, it's being out in the field. A lot of folks are the blue jean, black t-shirt. I have technology, right? We said we could just be, guys talking. Everybody's got that solution, but they're showing up via email, digitally.
Man, I feel bad. I'm wearing blue jeans and black t-shirts today. Hey man.
But I'm not standing on a stage in Silicon Valley saying that I've got a new solution that's going to win. I mean, heck, I'm in it 30 years, right? If I go back and I look at and I tell everybody, let's not panic over the AI or the digital transformation. And Robert, I think on your last podcast, you said, look, it's back to fundamentals. Fix your data, train your people, and monitor your progress. Right? I mean, no matter what we're doing, if we're looking at those solutions, I come back from when the technology was taking plans and specs and putting them on microfilm. Ooh, that was a big thing. And then we put digitizers over the top of a light box. Then it became CDs, right? Would the architect ever allow a CD? Then
Well,
it
it's
was
always been, it's
right?
always been back to the data. It's always been back. What are you getting truth from the field, right? It's always been, guys, turn in your time correctly. Guys, turn in your quantities correctly. What did you do today? Specifically, what happened on the job site, right? And what does that process look like? And getting people to participate. And I don't care if you're writing it down on a pen and paper or, pencil on the drawing, whatever you're doing. If you're not capturing it somewhere, right? And then it kind of leads to, well, what does digital integration do for us, right? Well, it gives us a collective area where we can all get to the data. And I think that's the point, right? That's the point with Track. A lot of these other solutions were out there trying to go, hey, guys, out in the field, folks, I get it. You guys are very, very busy and all these kind of things, but we can't get the truth that maybe you see every day. Now, NK, you went out to the field and got your solutions. I'm interested in how did some of those initial conversations go for you? Because I bet you that was pretty interesting.
Absolutely, Robert. And, thanks for mentioning that about reality capture and AI, right? Because when we started out back in 2022, my expectation was, that people are using these technologies day in, day out on the field and already, encountering so much productivity gains out of it. In fact, some of the early investors that we pitched to, Robert, actually told us, this is a solved problem. Why are you even doing this? Right? Probably do something in India and maybe some of these players actually acquire you. But when I went into the field, what I saw was completely different. There was so much data being captured. You were doing laser scans, there were drones, there were 360 cameras, but majority of the data was not even being touched. You would capture it and just have it as an insurance use case. If something goes bad, which inevitably does, you could go back and look back and say what happened or
Yeah.
when did it happen, right?
We call it
So there was
CYA.
value. Exactly, CYA use case, right? And that was something which I was not able to believe. Like you're capturing so much data, there's so much potential with this data, but you're not using it proactively. So that was the opportunity for Track3D, and when we started building it, that was the major unlock I had when I visited this field. Because I asked simple questions. You are doing 360 captures. How many times do you view it? And the answer was
Never.
almost never,
Right.
actually.
And, I to your point, NK, that was one of the things that I discovered, even early on, long before 2022. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am, but, long before that, the idea of capturing even just using a digital camera, right? The idea of taking pictures of, "Hey, what's behind this wall? How was this built?" Utilizing that data for as builts or something like that to put into a file, electronic file at some point, maybe sending an email. The thing is you capture it, and then nobody ever wanted it. Nobody wanted to use it until, to your point, there was some dispute. There
Third
was,
party involved. Yeah,
yeah,
liquidated damages gets
yeah,
mentioned.
liquidated damages, yes, those kind of things come up, and then all of a sudden it's, okay, now it's a problem, where is that stuff? And then you're searching, right? You've got, "Well, I sent that in an email back in, September or whatever," and you're trying to put that all together. Maybe you weren't quite organized enough. And then this goes to, I think, David, you and I talked about this kind of broken processes, right? If you don't already have this kind of stuff in place, right? Uh, it doesn't matter if you're going to get a tractor, if you're going to get some other solution. If your process is broken on figuring out how to capture the data in the first place or who's responsible for it, you're already in trouble, and you need to start taking a really, really good look at, hey, what really is going on? And so that's what I was interested, David, and we were talking about that. It's like, hey, how much of this is when somebody approaches, you about a thing, you go, well, let's talk about, how you're doing it today, right?
So that's really what I've seen not only for Track 3D, and I mean, that's where we hit the sweet spot, is what I've seen with technologies are, sure, they make the workflow you have far more efficient. So everybody does all that change management. Everybody gets burnt out on that lift. We get all the guys who've been doing this, my father included, right? What is this thing now? What do I have to learn, right? How many more solutions am I going to have to buy? They're getting sassed to death. And all they're doing is making a poor workflow or a poor work process more efficient. You're not solving the problem. You're not
Mhm.
bringing the solution. I think where I'm seeing a lot of the leadership side, and NK, like I said, somebody who's truly going field to develop the product is a win. When you see folks like KP Ready who have, thought leadership and are truly trying to steer the workflow, right? The efficiency of construction. That's where I'm seeing it. You got, I think right next to us when we were there, Robert Franco, right? With Outbuild, really good scheduling solution. You've got Tiago with Data Grid, right? Lots of I mean, he just put, hey, there's a lot of good solutions, and technology isn't for the faint of heart, right? NK, it's doing reality capture, progress or productivity tracking. It's a small space where everyone knows everyone that matters, right? So being part of that workflow and is really how you help solve the problem, going back to your question, right? Are you really making a workflow or an inefficiency that you're hearing in the field better with your solution? And I
Yeah.
think that when you asked me, you said, "What differentiates us?" Hey, look, it's not about the photo, the capturing of the photo. It's about, am I making sure that the CPI and the SPI are in line? And what am I doing to mitigate that cost overrun or that schedule overrun? I don't care whose logo it is, right? We see just last week, right? One company just acquired another company to do what we've already been doing with productivity, right? So now you've got companies who are merging to provide one solution that we can provide out of the box. But now you've got folks, just because they wear the same logo, it doesn't mean those solutions are any more connected. I
Right.
think, Robert, you and I talked about it, right? I
Well,
think it was all of this, everybody, if we go back in time, there were all these individual solutions. And then the industry said, oh, we're building silos. To your point, clean up your data, right? That was on your last podcast, right? How do you do that? And everybody was like, well, once it goes into this bucket, now my data's stale again, and I got to go ahead and keep maintaining the data. So everybody had to have a platform. I think we shouldn't be nervous about AI and the things that we're building, because now you can take a best in breed single solution like Data Grid or Outbuild or Track3D and still get the best, but still can connect it to the rest of your workflow. And that's what we solve when we go out to the field to talk to our superintendents and our PMs. We give them areas where they can immediately identify, hey, this saved me minutes of tracking an RFI in and out of Procore.
yeah.
Right? You
Get it.
saved me from having to upload. I don't need a model with Track3D. I mean,
Yeah.
even those are eye openers, right?
Yeah.
That, hey, I can just work from my 2Ds.
I get it. Well, you know what's, we talk about all this stuff, and workflows and SPIs and CPIs and a lot of acronyms for things. And then the end user sometimes is like, what do you mean? You say workflow, I call it work, right? And so, NK, I was going to, engage you on that because I was trying to get to, the question earlier was, what kind of pushback do you see when you took it out to the field and you say, hey, they're using a lot of this technology, but it's not really getting used again. It's just the data is going somewhere. It's just hanging out in some data lake somewhere. And then it's only used for a CYA. What kind of pushback did you get when you said, hey, by the way, I want to do this? And did they give you the whole, well, we are really kind of already doing that. I don't know why we need that. I mean, can you tell me about that a little bit?
So that was my expectation actually, Robert, when I went to the field, right? I
So
was
you
thinking,
expected to get pushed back automatically?
yes,
I got you.
yes. Because, again, I am an outsider, right? I don't come from the industry. And generally, our industry has a bad reputation, right? Which is not true at all. That, we are a technology laggard. So everyone thinks, you don't adopt enough technology. The people on the field are technology averse. But when I went to the field with an open mind, my thought process was, I don't know anything. I just have to go there, ask the right questions, and, engage with them. I'm not even selling anything at this point of time. When I was at the field, I was only doing discovery at the first part of it. I was saying, how are you using this? Okay, you're using a 360 capture. You're using this. You're using this. How are you using it right now? Would it be beneficial if you could also do this? What would be the most impactful time that I can actually give back to you? How could we actually do this? In fact, many assumptions that we had before also were actually unraveled just by going to the field. So what we understood was, this is not a tech averse industry. Average large company basically uses 200 to 300 applications. They use robots. They use, all kinds of project management tools, ERPs, so many apps. In fact, there is an app fatigue out there, right? There's so many technology, and I don't feel too super happy on their shoes being pitched by vendors like us all the time, actually. But that is where the realization came. What happened was, it's not that they don't like technology, it's that the technology that we are making is not simple enough, is not accessible enough. It's even cost prohibitive.
Yeah. Well,
So
David and I talked about that as well. We talked about, I've got people in the field, and I don't care if you're a project manager, superintendent, foreman, whatever. I've got folks in the field that they've got a full plate of work already. And that's just getting the building built or whatever they're doing, whether they're getting the plumbing in, they're getting the RTUs on the roof. I don't care what you're in. If you're a specialty contractor, you're a general contractor, you have got a full plate of things to do. Part of that involves some of that technology, but what I hear from the field all the time, or from the folks out there doing it, is, will you give me something that actually takes something off of my plate, right? And I thought that was interesting. I think you probably came to that same realization, right, NK?
yes, in fact, I can explain that realization with an analogy, right? Let's equate building a project, a construction site, to build a kid building a Lego set, right? A good Lego set, he has a good piece of instructions, he has all the blocks.
Everybody loves a good
Starting,
Lego set, yeah, right?
exactly, right? It's super fun. I love it. Now, we start building it, okay? What if you were asked to document every step while you were building it? You would absolutely hate that. You would love following the instructions, the plan, and building it, and coordinating. In fact, there could be a group of people building it together. It's extreme fun. But just writing it down, hey, today I put the 8 by 8 block of Lego, next I put this piece in this, or take picture at every time and do that. These are the menial. People are extremely proud, right? Even I am proud of any job site that Track3D has been deployed by. I drive past with the family and I said, hey, this job site is where we were deployed in. And people wear those in the helmet badges, right? They have stickers. Extremely proud of what we built. But these are the boring menial tasks that no one wants to do and people are not efficient at doing. I say, that was the opportunity for us.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Lego, kind of got it right. They get the instructions correct. But you also don't have somebody that owns the Lego piece that you're building and decides mid project they want to change it. By the way, that
I know.
star,
Yeah.
yeah, that Death Star that you're building. By the way, they're going to want to come in and change it. And here's the change plans, and then tell me how that all works out because there's some new material orders in there that we've kind of got to address. And how much time is that going to add to the schedule? Because seriously, we can't really push that schedule anymore. We've already pushed it way too much, right? And by the way, the budget on
We're
that.
missing that 8 by 8 and can we send it back from Legoland and help me get the rest of it finished? How long is that gonna take to get here?
So yeah, no, I get it. I think it's a great analogy. It is true. You got a good set of plans. You've got your day going, and the last thing you really want to be doing is going, oh yeah, I need to tell everybody on the planet that's involved in this exactly what I did today. Although at some level, when you are a superintendent, and this may be one of those things where that transition from maybe tradesperson, good technician, that kind of thing, into those leadership roles kind of gets a little blurry, right? Where there's some training involved, and there's some higher education involved in that step, because not everybody that's a good technician or a good tradesperson is a good leader. Do they understand what taking that leadership role means? Yes, I may not necessarily be out there pounding nails, or I may not be, uh, fitting pipe. I may not be doing all those things, but now there's a different set of rules that I have to kind of follow. There's different skills that I may need to have, or I may need to start to implement, which is good communication, following directive, and being able to question directive effectively to say, well, this what you're giving me here may not necessarily work, and here's why. You need to be able to explain,
The impact.
y
Yeah.
yeah, the impact in your experience. So, yes, at one level, you don't wanna have to count the grains of sand on the beach, or you don't wanna have to, report on every last little step you make, but there is that responsibility still in these functional roles. And maybe part of the problem is just the fact that maybe we haven't trained the guys up good enough. And they're kind of thrown to the wolves a bit, especially when they're in a new leadership position to go, oh, now I've got to use this technology and this technology, which I guess I can, but didn't necessarily have the processes in place before to say, okay, what does a good daily report look like? You know, what does a good safety report look like? How do I specifically record? Do I record incidents, or would it be better for me to record, areas where there could be a problem, right? And then get those things fixed, right, and document that. And then on the office side of the world, what is good to measure, right? I once had a talk to the electrical group. They were talking about, well, we're electricians and we can't count all the things that you want to count, let's say quantity wise, right? Getting back to that whole productivity
Uh-huh.
thing. They got way too much going on. And I said, well, you ever stop to think about maybe not trying to calculate everything, but calculate it every once in a while? And I kind of the light bulb kind of came on in his head. I said, track this one thing. Maybe it's a major portion of your, I don't know, whatever your conduit. You're doing 2-inch conduit. You got a lot of it, but you don't want to track it for the 6 months that you're running it out. But what about if you did this? What if you came up with a schedule that said, hey, this 2 weeks we're going to track 2-inch conduit, accurately, kind of to the linear foot. And you're only going to do it for 2 weeks. And then in the next 2 weeks, you're going to do something else. And you're going to get snapshots, right, within that time of truly what your productivity is, which is kind of gets back to what tracked is, right? It's not necessarily that they're going to use 100% of the data that you're going to capture, but at least you're going to have the data to do it, right? And B, you can take a snapshot of it in a specific amount of time. And so I thought that that was interesting when I looked at your product. It was like, hey, I can go back to a specific amount of time and say, this is kind of prime time for this is where we're doing this. Because, right, you may not want to track what the setup time looked like, right? Or maybe you do. But again, you get to pick and choose when you do it this way, right? So
Well,
that's
and I think
how.
that really, Robert, I think you hit it on the head, not only with that, but even on your prior about when you moved jobs and this wasn't necessarily part of what I used to know or how I used to do it. I think the key to any of them, right? And I'm an old guy. I've been doing this for 30 years. In any of the solutions I've seen, the key, in addition to solving a need and taking one off the plate, like you said, is it has to be simplicity, number one. And just the example you gave about capturing it every so often. Well, today, you maybe when you captured it, you were capturing it with the intent for capturing that conduit. But like we were saying, when liquidated damages comes in, or if we start seeing a schedule lag, where were we? What was behind the wall back in April? Is it there? Now think of what we just took off the plate. You already had that capture because you did it already. You didn't necessarily need it, but now that you did it with Track3D, you have it, right? So we see a lot of that kind of aha moment, right? That's what I'm seeing when I'm in the field with them saying, yeah, it's not just you're making me walk a job every day, every 2 days with a camera on and I'm tracking everything and I don't need it. I've got things I got to fix or, subs I got to maintain or manage. Having that gives them a little bit of extra peace of mind that we did take something off the plate. And I think it starts with what you just said. It's got to be simple, right? It's
Mhm.
gotta be easy. The report should be there. It shouldn't be, I have to take it, then I gotta bring it back from my clipboard, then I gotta go open up a different solution and go find the RFI, then I gotta go look and see who's got it, then, that's all of those don't seem like a lot, but you know as well as I do, that's a lot of time out of somebody's day that when you said, "Hey, just speak in general terms, don't use the acronyms," right? That's what solutions that are effective, forget about it being Track 3D, that's the solutions I think that win in the market now. And I think
I
that's
get
what
you.
the appeal of AI is. right? Because you can you don't trust it maybe, but it is kind of nice to be able to say, hey, how many doors have been installed
Yeah.
and be able to
I
get that data.
I gotta be honest, I look at AI when I stop to think about maybe agentic AI, or we stop to think about how we utilize it. I look at it as a project engineer or an assistant project manager, somebody that's come on new to the job, maybe fresh out of college. They're really, really smart. You know what I mean? They're really smart, but they don't know a lot. So what do you have to do? Well, you got to give them, you know, you have to ask them bite-sized information questions, right? And then they kind of give you a response. And then once you get that response back, you kind of do have to do a little bit of a double check on, is that right? Does that make sense? We obviously can't throw everything into one bucket and say, yeah, absolutely. They came back with that answer. That's fine. When you have something new like this, when you have somebody new, there is the training period, right? There is a trust, but verify.
Trust period,
You're
right?
right. There's a trust period, and there's a verify period, and that doesn't necessarily ever end. At least right now, especially with AI, there's the trust. I guess what is it? And then there's the trough of disillusionment. There's something that's the
Right.
hype
Yeah.
cycle.
That's for
A
sure.
lot of times we end up falling back into the trough of disillusionment, that kind of thing. But yeah, so yeah, there's those factors that we have to consider. That's why I think that AI, yes, is a tool. It's like having a new guy on the job, and we're going to utilize it, but we're going to check it, make sure that it's doing a good job, and those types of things. Okay, I wanted to get to you a little bit about, I can see GCs wanting to capture this kind of information. I have been in that. I've been in that litigation period at the end of a job when it's like, hey, what happened, when, and where. So I understand that. What I want to talk about is, how does this apply to if you're a subcontractor or a specialty contractor? How can you utilize a Track3D to your advantage?
Absolutely. So, as we talked about, right, Robert, we initially started with the general contractors and some of the lead ones. But then, we started interacting with trade partners. And, today, the number one wall and ceilings contractor in the country, the performance contracting group, they work with us on an enterprise scale. We are in the path of going to almost every job site they do, where we want to actually track this. And the way they put it out is, they said this is even a bigger problem to us compared to the general contractor. Because
Yeah,
for us, the productivity is the most important thing. It is what determines whether we are making money or losing money on that job.
yeah. I
Mm,
promise you, if you were a subcontractor of mine, and I started breathing down your neck about, hey, when are we going to be, time's ticking, when you're going to be out of the way, because I got other folks coming in, there is absolutely the need for progress and productivity tracking.
Exactly.
Okay, so people understand more about your product. How do they get that drawing turned into what you guys utilize? And maybe if you have a screen of kind of how that works, we can try to share that. This will be a first, ladies and gentlemen. This is a premiere on the ConTech Exec podcast. We're actually going to show some product.
Hey,
So
thank
if
you.
you
And
want,
we didn't
Okay,
even
perfect.
ask for that.
yeah,
Thank
I
you.
know. So if you want to share your screen, I thought we talked about this,
Well,
NK.
we'll see if NK really knows how this product works.
Yeah, let's see.
Robert, hit him with some
Well,
good questions
I'm just
today.
saying, let's see if my studio application here will actually let him share a screen. I don't know if that'll happen. Will that work?
Yep, I think it does. Let me
And
try
while he's
right
putting it
now.
up, right, that's the other thing too, right? Small incremental differences, right, Robert? Like you said, not everybody knows the acronyms. A lot of our folks aren't only the bigger clients, right? So the beauty of what NK did develop though is you can work from the 2Ds that you're looking at here or use a model. Several of the solutions always require a model, right? This is a little bit easier to go ahead and see, and NK will take us through it.
Right. So what we're seeing
Absolutely.
here, yeah, from what you showed me at the thing, these blue lines indicate kind of the walk pattern and the
Yes.
capture, right?
Yes, that is right. So this blue donuts or dots that you see over here, that is a path of the capture. In fact, every point when I click will take you to that location exactly, the
Uh-huh.
vehicle space. You can look at it and you have the entire visual history of the project captured, right? But what AI is doing. And that's the difference between reality capture and what we call it reality intelligence. Reality intelligence is about taking this imagery and converting it into measurable, meaningful insights. Now, in this case, what you're looking at is just colors, right? So let me turn it off for 1 second so that I can show it to you again. Like I turn it off, this is the floor plan, but the layers that you see over there specifically correspond to, we are looking at drywall and framing right now, and you're specifically looking at the first coat of paint. The blue color is showing you first coat of paint. It's telling me 96% of first coat of paint is done. But most importantly, it's telling me 53,453 square feet is actually done.
I
So
see.
it's just measuring off images, Robert.
I
You
got you.
have the
Measuring, yeah. And then is it comparing it to like the actual estimate that's that would maybe had come up to say, hey, we're going to be painting 54,000 square feet of wall, or those types of things?
Yes. So again, right, I'll give you one more example of this. So I've gone back in time now between two dates because you walk different paths, right? It's not possible to even walk the same path, but it doesn't matter because the images have been located in your floor space.
I see.
And as you can see, an image over here, right? You would see the framing was on at that point of time, whereas at this point of time, the first coat of paint is actually done. It's almost finished. So the changes happening over time across any duration. You can have a 2-week duration, 2 months duration, or over 6 months.
I got you.
Because across all the categories of objects, we are calculating the percentages, the actual quantities installed, and so we also get the trends over time.
I
Like,
see.
let me show you an example of that as well. Like, let's look at the trends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So for those of you folks that might be just listening to this on the Spotify podcast, we are going to show. We got some graphs here that we're showing and some actual drawings and analytics that are kind of coming up here. I will recommend that you go to the YouTube channel, ConTech Exec on YouTube. This has some very interesting stuff to kind of see here. But these are the kind of things where, like I was saying, this kind of data capture, obviously, whether you're walking around doing it, or you've got maybe the robot dog, you're working for a fairly larger company, this kind of thing has to happen on a frequent basis, right? In order to be able to capture this kind of detail. So I find it fascinating that we can now take a picture and then find what's really going on. It has recognition capability.
And I
And
would
to your point, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, NK.
So I was saying, to your point, Robert, you said trust but verify, right? Here, you don't need to actually, the verification data is right over there. Your system is giving you the insights and you can trust it because you can verify everything actually.
Yeah. So tough question here, I guess. Have you found areas where, hey, there's an anomaly here? This doesn't look like this original data doesn't look like it's supposed to look compared to the end data. Have you made those kind of discoveries? Are there reports in there which basically say, hey, there's an anomaly?
100%, right? So we have 3 versions of a product actually. We have the visual track, the core visual part of it, right? And then we have the progress track, which I just showed you. And the third part is what we call the deviation track. Let me quickly bring that up as well.
All
So
right.
that is where we specifically tell you, hey, this was the design intent from the BIM. This is what you wanted to build. But this is what you actually built, and let me show it to you, right? So if I look at the notes over here, you're looking at all the deviations that are present. The offset deviation, routing deviations, insufficient clearances, and every point I click to, it will take me to the context, and then I can obviously open the BIM, overlay it, compare it to all of that.
I see.
So you know exactly what has happened. So the system is telling you this.
Okay, so is a subcontractor going to have these files to do comparison with? Is this a kind of, how do they get that?
Yes, so the design intent is coming from them. right? The right side of the screen that you see is the design intent, right? So this is a 3D design, a Naviswork file or a Revit file. And this is just the normal reality capture that you're doing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
because everything that we captured, we are converting it into 3D, we are able to measure of it, and we are able to give you these insights, like what the deviations are, where
So
those specific
that so
deviations
that
exist.
description is that written like via the AI, or is that something that somebody else has written?
It's AI written, human verified, and then passed on to you actually as a customer.
Okay. That's pretty
And
cool.
and then, like you were just about to say, right? That's amazing. Here's one of the things that I really see is when you see that deviation, notice there is that Procore button, right? Let's be real about how it happens in the field. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times now going to be the basis of maybe an RFI or a change order or something like that. Now there you have the capture all met already ready to drop right in and now go get work progressed on it. Go bring that sub back in. Go bring the parties together who can fix that problem to get in front of your subs getting stacked up because you have a deviation that now has to be corrected or rework that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, and the thing, always what I hear a lot is, risk management. They want to be able to look at a drawing before it gets to this point and say, where am I going to run into a problem? Right? They want that predictive measure, maybe they call it predictive analytic.
Right, right.
Um, so those are the types of things, like I said, here, what I see is the kind of the obvious documentation of, hey, this is what we got. This is what was designed. Um, it's kind of like, to your point, NK, early on, it's the actual use of the data capture, right? The archive file, what's behind the wall, all that kind of stuff. So definitely see all that. And I can see this kind of going down the road of, if you saw this a week before and you realized from the BIM model, if you saw it, you would say like, well, it looks like we might be running into a bit of an issue here in a couple of weeks, because we don't necessarily have the room to build that. I mean, one of my worst nightmares was building a restaurant in downtown Dallas, and I had to go through 3 floors of 18-inch concrete to put in a duct system, the a heat duct
Mm-hmm.
system, right? The as built of the building was incorrect. And it didn't matter. I mean, I literally had the guy that built it was there with me, and I was like, "Hey, where's the as built on this?" He goes, "Man, I don't know. The owner should have the as built." Well, the owner didn't have an as built, and so we ended up finding out that the closet area was this little triangle about yay big, and it wasn't big enough for the duct that we had designed or had intent on, right? So what did we have to do? Well, not only did it add time to the schedule, but it had added more concrete cutting in areas where I didn't know anything about it. So then I had to GPR the whole thing, right? And I had to find out where the tension cables were, and if they were in the way, then we were really going to have to rethink this whole thing. Um, it took just a lot of time, a lot of work, and I know other folks have been through this before, where you don't know what's in that concrete or you don't know what's under that ground until you actually dig it up and look, or cut it out and look. And yeah, it just created a nightmare of, hey, I get what your intent was, and I still think this goes on. At the MEP conference just last year, we were talking with the VDC guys, and they're like, "Yeah, we design a lot of great stuff." The BIM guys are like, "Yeah, we design a lot of great stuff," but then all of a sudden we get it out to the field, and we didn't. It's close, but it's not spot on. And when you're dealing with some of this stuff, you don't have some of the tolerances.
Tolerances. Yeah.
Right. You don't have the tolerances that you may think you have, especially when you're off. And that's why I don't know. I get frustrated sometimes. I think about, back in the day, it's like, how accurate is, say, this laser level, or this pinpoint accuracy on this thing. You find out there's a tolerance in that thing, that maybe it's an 1/8 inch and 20 feet. Well, and 200 feet, that's over an inch. You know,
Mm.
Right.
it's off. And when you're designing, again, when you're designing, I get it. It's a perfect world, right? But there is no perfect world out there. There's not only their attitudes and opinions, but there's real world. We missed it by this much, or I've heard guys say, close enough for my house, kind of thing. And again, that's the kind of attitudes and things that you start to look at, and you go, wow, no wonder we run into so much, and we have so much need for, accountability in the field, right? So we
Well, I
got a
mean,
lot
you
of
and I
stuff.
talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it at Procore, right? I mean, all the time I hear everybody about, and again, the catchphrases change over time, right? It was BIM, it was platform, it was AI, it was several weeks ago, it was the digital twin, right?
Mhm,
Really? I think we got a digital second cousin, right? I don't know on some of these jobs we really have that digital twin, right? So to your point, close enough for my house, right? Well, what happens when the guy with the big key rings looking to punch through that hole in the wall and it's not there? And his drawings are under some dip cup in the basement
mhm.
that may not even be the last set of drawings that went out.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right there.
And so to that point, and this is kind of where, we kind of come full circle on this. We start to talk about that. So we've got all this digital information, NK, right? We've got it. We haven't been using it in the past. It was always the CYA, folder. That's where it ended up somewhere. If we needed it to say, hey, we're not responsible, that's what we use it for. But David just mentioned something good. Like, you got the guy who's now going to need to cut through a wall somewhere. How is he going to get access to the information that he needs to know that he's not going to, cut into or, hit into a major water line? What's he going to, how's it going to stop work? How's it going to affect other people in the building if something goes wrong, right? It's that type of risk management. So, obviously, creating a system of record from day one to the end, and then being able to then transfer that information so that the right folks have access to it is going to be even more important as you move forward, because it doesn't do us any good to have a track 3D or a track system, and then all of a sudden it just, well, it's what we used on the job, but then the owner or whoever, the building operator, the building management system, doesn't have that data, right? It doesn't have that information. So how's that getting passed on? Do you guys know how that's working for those teams?
Oh, great you mentioned that, Robert, because after general contractors, trade partners, now some of the leading owners of retail chains, airports, even data centers, right, have started engaging with us. And they say, this data is even more valuable for us,
Hmm.
not only during the construction phase, but these become the most accurate as-builts of the site possible.
Hmm.
Not that BIM, not that drawing that we get at the end of the project. These are the as-builts. So they're saying, can we continue using it? And we're handing over this data to them, actually. We archive them and give it to them in a downloadable format. But more importantly, what they are preferring is have it on the platform itself so that they can navigate and they can even enrich with information as things change.
Yeah,
Manage that
even
asset,
yeah,
right, for the life cycle of the I mean, they're building structures that are gonna last for 50 years,
yeah,
right? They own that structure. They
right,
want that data.
yeah,
I'm actually seeing I think we may have even talked about that at the show. I'm actually seeing more owners where it used to be the owners just relied on whatever the GC said, billing milestones, if it's close enough, they get a CM in there or, an owner's rep in there maybe to help give them some insulation. But we're seeing owners becoming way more involved in setting that general condition to say, we want reality capture on this work. A lot of
yeah.
our own data center owners, the Microsofts of the world, they want that data in the general conditions of their project for that very reason, Robert.
Yeah, and I believe, and this is just my I always call it the age of AI is moving very quickly upon us. We're in the very early stages of it, even though it's been around 20 years. Most people don't know that it has been around for a long time. People have been working on large language models for a long time. And they've made careers of it, and now we're finally starting to see I guess, the consumer level of what AI is, right? And then Of course, when it gets to the consumer level now, it gets a point of nervousness there. But what I think is most importantly on this, especially on these big projects, massive, I don't care, like I'm talking airports, infrastructure projects, things like that, because they are going to last. We've got an energy infrastructure that is in desperate need of, repair and replacement and things like that. Well, guess what, folks? We're going to have to document all of that for that next generation, because not only are we not going to be able to, uh, not only we're not going to be able to replace all of the kind of tradespeople, but you can't replace any of that data because there's no historical data that's absolutely accurate. So if we're going to correct the system that we have on these things, guess what? We're going to have to document what is in place now, basically a rehash of the as built as is, right? And it's kind of like buying a used car. I got this used car. It is what it is. And if I'm going to take it into the shop and repair it, I need to know what I did to it. We're going to need that. We're going to need that kind of data so that in the future generations, when there's less people, less tradespeople that need access to this information about what they're changing and what's supposed to be there versus what's not there, they're going to need this kind of information. And it's going to be for any general contractor or any subcontractor, it's probably going to be what I'll say the ticket to entry, meaning you'll have to have this type of technology in order to be able to win the contract in general, because they're going to need to know, hey, by the way, with a more educated ownership and a more educated, consumer, I guess, they're going to need to know. I say, hey, the technology's out there. We need to know this because you may not be here in 10 years when I got to fix this. Or if I got to repair this, I need that information. That data is mine. And that gets into a whole nother.
Or a robot, right? We haven't said
Yeah.
it, but right? Or there's now a robotic piece
Yeah.
that's going to help, not to replace
Exactly.
the tradesman, but there might be now a robotic angle that
Yeah.
gets you.
Correct.
Things that we haven't even thought about yet.
Yeah. Well, and that's a whole nother,
Whole different topic
yeah,
for
it's a
us.
whole nother can of worms that we could easily go into,
For sure.
because
sure.
again, robots are going to be just as good as the information you put into them, just like AI. And so those types of things. Guys, man, time flies when you're having fun and we're talking about
Sure,
products. Thank you for showing it to everybody. And thanks for being on the ConTech Exec podcast today. Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you.
Robert, thank you. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Robert,
it.
for having us.
Love it.
All right. Before we go, let's just talk real quick. I always try to give everybody an opportunity. David, you can just kind of tell us how to get in touch with Track.
Sure. So you can always go to track3d.ai or come to me directly. I'm happy to take any questions directly. It's david.s@track3d.ai. And happy to talk about, not even if it's not even related to Track3D. Happy to go ahead and help wherever there's a solution set that I can help with. Over 28 years, I've seen them all.
Very
So
good.
happy to go ahead and help with anybody who's got something in the mix.
Thanks, David. Well, like I said, it was great talking to you at Groundbreak. Great talking to you again here.
Robert, thank you for
And,
having us.
We'll stay in touch and see how things go in 2026.
For sure.
Perfect, Robert. Thank you.
That's it for today's ConTech Exec. Thank you all so much for joining us. And please share this with your friends and your colleagues out there. We try to cover just about everything under the construction technology and construction sun. So until then, have a great week. Bye now.